Sales. Do it properly and your business makes money. Do it wrong, you die. Today, you'll learn the most effective way to sell in person and online. Hello, this is Stephen Cavallo from the business firm, and today we're going to be exploring sales technique. We're going to be looking at the difference at sales approach depending on whether you're present at the sales situation or whether you're not. So for example, what's the best way to sell online or through direct mail where you're not there to interact with the buyer? We'll look at that and we'll contrast that to the best way to sell when you're actually face to face in a personal selling situation. So let's start with the online or direct mail type situation where you're not present with the buyer, there's no interaction. So this is more of a canned or scripted type sales process, because it needs to be, because you want to ensure that you take the buyer through a number of steps, a process that will lead them from the beginning through to the end where we want them to buy. And let it be said that what I'm about to discuss here is assuming that you're already past the initial lead generation process. So you've got the first leads, you're past the first part of the sales funnel. So these are people that are known to you. So let's begin a method that works well in that sort of a situation. So remember, this is an online or direct marketing type situation. So I want to bring to your attention, you may have heard of it, there's a model called the AIDA model, AIDA. And this model works quite well where you're not there. So it works as a stand-in for a person that would ordinarily take a prospect, a potential buyer. You take them through a journey where they are able to discover and learn and understand the value of something. The reason why it's structured is because when a person goes through a buying decision, they're deciding whether to buy something, the brain takes them through this journey where there's discovery, then there's evaluation, and so on and so forth. Then it leads them to ultimately, hopefully, buying your product. And the AIDA model is very good at taking them through that sort of journey. So AIDA stands for AIDA, which is attention, interest, desire, and action. So in the first instance, you need to get their attention. Without their attention, they're not going to pay attention to anything. They won't even know you're there. So the first thing is to get that attention. And you can do that in a number of different ways, but whatever way you do it, it needs to be relevant and instantly recognizable to that target. I'm about to take you through an example of this, but we'll look at the next stage, and that's interest. Now with interest, this is where you've got their attention, and now you need to keep their interest so that they keep looking at the page, they keep looking at your site, or they continue watching your video. And this is where whatever you say next has to immediately hit at the core of what you know that they want, what they're interested in, and grab their interest straight away. And usually this is done with some sort of an emotional appeal or some very strong rational reason why they should continue to pay attention to your website or your letter or whatever you have in front of you, or whatever you've offered them to look at. Desire is the next step, and this is where you've got their interest. Now you need to start connecting features of your product or your service directly to as benefits to them. So when you get to desire, this is where you need to have a very good understanding of what the person wants, what problem they're trying to solve. And in that desire stage, this is where you're telling them all the different things your product or service does that's able to take away all their pains, solve their problems, or if it's not about solving a problem and it's purely about something that they want to have, then this is where you make them feel good and imagine using your product or service and giving them all the benefits or the glamour or the good feeling or whatever it is that they're after. This is where that needs to happen. So this creativity and directness and really making sure you hit the hot buttons in what your copy says or in what your video shows or the imagery. This is where you get them engaged and emotionally involved in what you're saying. And then finally, of course, there's action, A for action. And this is where you need to ask for the sale or ask them to sign the line or click now, put in your credit card number, pick up the phone and call us, whatever the action may be to actually close the sale, to get them to make the transaction. That's the final piece. And of course you can't get them to the final P, there will be no action unless you've gotten their attention, you've got their interest, you've built up some desire, and only then, if you've taken them through that journey and that natural process, that buying, the decision-making process, will they ever consider buying anything. So for that reason, AIDA is very, very good. It's a structured sales technique. It can be worked out in advance really, really well. You put a lot of research into this, so you know that your script works. It's hitting all the right things. We'll wait and see if they'll buy it. So that's the AIDA model. Its strength lies in its simplicity and also in its logic and its structure. It's very good to use in situations where you need to train people quickly. So if you've got a lot of sales reps or you've got new customer service people, and until such time that the knowledge of the product or service that they're supposed to be selling, until such time that becomes part of them, helping them with these scripts is very good. It's a very good idea. It will give them something. It will give them structure. It will give them information, and it also will prevent them from bumbling and going from back and forth. And know it's a very good idea to train people in the AIDA formula. And in terms of direct mail, in terms of internet, if you take people through those steps, you're going to end up with much, much better conversions than you would otherwise. Okay, let me give you an example of the AIDA model being used in perhaps a real life situation. If I were selling an iPhone or an iPad, and an older person or an old lady came in who doesn't have a smartphone, doesn't even have a mobile phone of any description, has no computer, is not tech savvy, how do you sell someone like that an iPhone? How do you sell someone like that an iPad or a computer for that matter? Well, I mean, they're not typical buyers of that sort of a product or the services that Apple provide. But that's because they're not understanding the value that they could extract from buying an iPad or an iPhone. So if I'm presented with a grandmother and I know that this grandmother has grandchildren that she loves dearly, and a son or daughter, and that her grandchildren, her son or daughter are not in Australia, or they're not in the country where she lives. So let's pretend that she's in Australia and her grandchildren are in Europe, and she misses them. She misses them a great deal. Well, if the task was to offer the grandmother an opportunity to buy an iPhone or an iPad, this is what I would say to her. be using more or less the AIDA formula. And this is in a real life situation. So first thing I would say to her is, you miss your grandchildren, don't you? Oh yes, I miss them greatly. You know, they're in Europe and I don't get to hardly speak to them. And if I do speak to them, it's only for a short period because the phone calls are so expensive and I'm a pensioner and so on and so forth. So you're getting, in listening to her say that, you're getting information. And in that information, I'm picking up a number of things. Telephone costs are a problem because there's international dialing from her home phone in her house. Time zone's probably a problem, and she misses seeing their reactions. You can only hear a voice on a phone call anyway. So knowing this, I say to her, look, we got her attention because we've asked her about her grandchildren that she miss her. I then get her interest and I say, look, what if I was able to give you your grandkids, your daughter, your son-in-law, every single night to see them? And what if I was able to do that for free for you? Oh my goodness, that would be amazing. And, you know, how's that possible? Phone calls cost so much. And I said, no, it wouldn't even be a phone call. What if you could see them? What if you could talk to them as if they were sitting in front of you? Oh, how will we do that? I said, look, it's simple and it doesn't cost anything. Look at this. And I'll pick up the iPhone or the iPad and I'll FaceTime a child, maybe one of my own children, and I say to her, look, this is my son. And she sees and she interacts and say, look, imagine you're doing this with your grandchildren. You can do that any time as long as they're awake, or you know, you can FaceTime as many times as you want, and it doesn't cost anything. You can do it for as long as you want. Oh my goodness, you know. And then so you've got her attention, you've got her interest. Now you're going into design. You're talking to her about when, you know, how good would it be that time, you know, you missed out on seeing little Johnny's graduation, or you didn't see them, little Maria blow out her birthday candles. You missed out on all that. What if you could see it as it was happening? As it was happening, how much would you love that? Oh my goodness, that would be terrific. So we've got her to a point where she's emotionally engaged, and we've shown her how something that she would ordinarily have no interest in. She would never think of getting a Mac or an iPad or an iPhone. But we've showed her one thing that this is able to do, this device is able to do, that has value to her, and that has immense value to her, and that solves a lot of problems because it's free. It can go as long as they want. She can see, she can interact, they can speak back and forth, and you can extrapolate that, and you can say, well, you don't have to miss any more events. You can be there at the birthdays. You can read them a bedtime story. You can sing them a lullaby. You can listen to them playing piano to you if they're learning to play piano. These are all the things that she would otherwise have done if her grandchildren and her family were here in Australia with her. But if they're overseas, well, look, this is the next best thing. So all of a sudden, we've taken her through this thing. We've shown her the value. We've got her engaged emotionally. And now it's for the last day is action. And that's where you ask for the sale. That's where you say, look, we've got it here. You can buy it now, you know. And if you've set it up correctly, you should be able to have pricing options, or repayment options, or finance of some type if it's expensive for a pensioner. But as an example, that's showing you how to take people through a sales process using the AIDA model. But there's a better model for that. A better model for live sales. I'm going to talk to you about it now. So we've gone through an example of using the AIDA model, and it is very, very good, particularly if you're not there you use the scripts, you use that model, you use the flow of logic, you use that as a stand-in for a person. But it does have limitations. I mean, it is a structured thing, it's a canned presentation, and therefore it doesn't have the flexibility. What you might find is in a real life situation, people, they don't follow that flow perfectly every single time. They jump back and forward, and for this you need more flexibility. And the other thing is if you don't do it in a natural way, that's if you're using it live in personal selling situation, it can sound a little bit not fake, but it can sound a little bit manufactured, or like you're tricking them or you're trying to manipulate them. Done properly, it won't. But someone that just reads a script with no emotion and no natural sense about them, the receiver of that interaction might pick up something negative in the situation. So there is a much better one. And for personal selling, this is the only way that you should consider selling face to face. And this is what's called the consultative selling approach. So the consultative selling approach, it's about relationships, relationship selling. It's a situation where you're not there to lead them through a script. Yes, there is a process. I mean, everyone needs to go through that process where they understand the value. But as you do that process, you're not going there leading them through a linear process like you would in the AIDA formula. Here, what you're trying to do is listen. Listen to understand really well their position. A lot deeper than what you would have in the AIDA model. So, in the consultative selling situation, you're trying to work out all the pains, all the needs, all the problems that your buyer has, your potential buyer has. And the way you do that is by asking questions, good probing questions. And as you ask questions, the buyer will speak to you, and he'll share, or she'll share with you all what they're trying to solve, or what they're trying to attain, or the benefit they're trying to derive through the product or service that you may potentially have for them. And so every time that they share a problem, a need, a want that they don't have, their present situation is they don't have that thing that they're after, or they've got a problem that they're trying to solve. Their intended situation is having the problem solved or fulfilling that need, getting that benefit. And each time one of those arises, see that as a gap. See that as a gap. And each gap is an opportunity for you to say, okay, I've just picked up a gap. I know that I can fix that gap with my product or one of my services. And so every time a gap appears, something should come up in your head. As they're speaking to you, you're hearing these gaps, something comes up in your head, little light bulb, and say, okay, I know I can solve that one with this product. And as they speak, you listen for these gaps every single time. And every time you get another gap, you recognize there's another gap. If you have a product or service that can fix that problem, that can take them to the state that they want to do, you know that you've got another piece of value that you can offer that buyer. And so you listen as much as you can, and you're gathering information, and you're finding these gaps, and as many gaps as you can find, you're trying to find solutions in your bag of tricks, in your services, in your products. And once you've done as much as you can of this discovery of gaps, and you've joined together your service or product that will fix the gaps, you then present all of that. And so you communicate as clearly as you can to that buyer, look, you mentioned such and such, look, I can fix that for you. Well, I have this thing, and it's able to do that for you and make it go away. Really? I said, yeah, you can. And look, the other thing is that you mentioned the other issue that you're having. Well, we can fix that for you too. It's not a problem. And look, there's even that we can do. And so what you're doing, you've brought back to that buyer all these points of value. You're bringing up all this value to them. And in their mind, you're becoming more and more and more attractive a buying proposition for them, because you're solving more and more of their issues, or you're bringing them into a better state that they're trying to get to. The more value you can bring, the more of these gaps you can solve, you can bridge for them, the more likely they are to want to buy your product. And so in that consultative sales process, it's not a linear thing. You're going around in circles quite a bit, and you get them to a point where you can see that they're quite, and then you ask for the order. And if they don't get it, then you go back and you speak a little bit more and you find out more questions. Often they'll come up with certain objections. It might be to price, it might be to availability, whatever it may be. Each time you listen and you come up with solutions. One way or the other, you need to find solutions to the issue that they're having and close those gaps. Keep coming back, ask for the order. Might have to ask for order a few times. At the end of the day, if what you have on offer is coming across to them as valuable enough for the price that you're asking, they will buy if they're able to. It may be that they're not, in which case you have to revisit them another time. But as far as sales approach goes, in a face-to-face situation, personal selling, the consultative approach will be much more powerful, much more effective, because it's not you trying to manipulate them down a path like a canned presentation. It's you on the basis that you're there to try and help them solve an issue. They accept you as an equal in respect to the conversation and helping them in their situation. And therefore, you're building a relationship. You're showing them that you're trying to help them. Don't bring up things that don't, don't pretend that you've got things that will solve issues that they have. If they don't, only bring what's relevant, only bring what's real, put it on the table, and it will make a bigger impact on that buyer and increase your chances of a sale. Well, that's it for today's session. I urge you to have a look at my other video. It's called What is Marketing? In that video, it goes into quite some detail, understanding how to create what buyers actually want. Have a look at that video. Also, check out our podcast. It's on iTunes, Stitcher Radio, and TuneIn. It's called the Business Firm Radio Show for decision makers. And in that, we go into a lot of detail. Interviews that I have with people around the world, leading minds in sales, in marketing, fundraising, and there's a lot of value for you in listening to that. Thank you for your time. I wish you all the best. This has been a Stephen Cavallo production, all rights reserved. Recorded in Adelaide, South Australia.